Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember.
These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Growing up, I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not or something you won't be. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians or choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they wanna do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shame. And that's the reason I'm staying up late, trying to find a way to escape the stereotypes this day and age is making me feel like the only way I'll be happy is getting signed to a label and making money through rapping. I wanna share my emotion because this world is attacking the very principle of life that lets the people be happy. If you don't have a reason to breathe, why even live? These battle scars are impressions of everything that it is.
Scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Now, if I had a voice that reached 100 million people, I'd tell them there's a reason that we're all created equal. Cause some decide to be great and some decide a sequel to an average person's life is simply what they want to be. So you make your decision, all I know is what I'm given won't define the life I lead or the way I dwell in existence. I've seen a greater image on the walls of where I'm living, and the words twisted and scripted remind me of something written. Faith is a gift that is given down to the people. If one believes it, one receives it. It's given if it is needed. Don't ever think you're trapped in a life that you never wanted. Your options are infinite, that's some mathematical logic. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers and these battle scars on my church. Not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers, these battle scars on my church.
Scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These
Okay. Oh, that is. Let me see if my. Ooh, you can like see up my nostrils, and I see comments. By the way, I do see comments. Hold on. I was trying to like mess up my camera ahead of time, and it wouldn't zoom properly, and it zoomed way too much. Let me see if I can fix that. But how are y'all doing? I am much better. Okay, much better. Man, you could see my pores there a minute ago. I see you, JJ and Tyler, and I don't like the way my hair looks today because if you noticed from my car stream this morning, I had wet hair because I was running late. So it's all screwed up. So I decided I'll break into my... Yes, I do have a whole stash of these things. So in order to pull my hair back... Okay, now I'm more comfortable. I've got my gear on, and it keeps my hair out of my face. I hope you all are doing well. Oh, and I need to turn off that little heater because I know you can hear it. So, what we're going to be doing today, but first, let me do my grifting along the bottom. I'm begging for patrons at this point. So, patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. You do get bonus content. And it does help because, yeah, it's the way I earn part of my filthy lucre. So, what else? Oh, the Touch Grass t-shirt. Mine is coming any day now. I have sold some of those. That really needs to be the next convention shirt. I'm telling you, the next convention, for DC. Well, actually, I've got some really naughty ideas for convention theme for DC, but I think I am going to submit as our convention theme touchgrass. Honestly, there are some people who need to get out of their basement, and I'm saying that as I'm sitting in my basement, and seriously just commune with nature and touch grass. So today's going to be part LNC update, part rant, but more so, I want to hear from you guys if you have questions about what happened at the Idaho, call it a special hearing, special meeting last night, because I understand it was complex and there were a lot of rabbit trails thrown out. And I hate that term in a way because it implies bad faith, and I don't mean that at all. People who are really emotionally invested in what's going on in their state party, and they should be, when they finally have someone who's willing to listen to them, they want to say everything. They want to air out every complaint and grievance they have. It is so understandable. But the LNC, what we can deal with is very narrow. So there was a lot of stuff thrown at the wall, and there was only a little bit that we could concentrate on because the rest they really had to resolve internally and would never be our business. So I understand it could be very confusing to people who are listening that didn't read through all the documents. So to answer Tyler's question, I subscribe. I'm learning the Twitch terminology. Anyone obviously can follow, which is like subscribing on YouTube, but subscribing on Twitch would be like if you have an Amazon Prime account, you get a free paid subscription to a channel, costs you nothing, and it helps support a Twitch streamer. Any day now, maybe. The way Twitch is way easier than YouTube to get to. In YouTube, they would call it the partner program. On Twitch, it's an affiliate. You have to make certain metrics, but you have to do it within one 30-day period. And I'm hoping tonight I get enough concurrent viewers that it pushes my average up to be over 3, because that's what I need. Within a certain, and I don't know when their 30-day period stops and ends, but within whatever that period is, that's the last metric, is to consistently have always online 3 concurrent viewers. Because my last few streams have had so many, it went from like an average of 0.6 to I'm at 2.8, I think right now, or 2.7. So I'm almost there. I'm like almost there. And once you hit that, you don't have to continue that. You just have to continue streaming enough. And I think most people realize me doing hours of talking isn't an issue. It just isn't an issue. So soon, I'll let you all know. That's why I'm doing these Twitch-only streams right now, to get everyone watching here. So maybe go shoot it on your Facebook page now. Even if someone really doesn't want to watch, at least get them. They can't mute it, though, because it doesn't count. Twitch knows when you mute, apparently. But just get them to pull it up on their screen to help my metrics. So, but if anyone has questions, particularly since I can see your comments now, I do want to address them. Otherwise, I'm just going to give you my summary and my rants, because I think today is National Derp Day. Well, today and yesterday, probably. Let's take time zones into effect. We're in the National Derp period of time, because some comments that have been made are just so mind-numbingly bad that I don't even know what to say. So let's talk about everything but Idaho first. It looks like the monthly LNC meeting that would normally have been September 4th is going to be moved to September 11th. It's normally the first Sunday of a month, as long as there wasn't a physical meeting within 30 days before or 30 days after. That is Labor Day weekend, and a lot of people are going to be out of town or likewise. I was going to be on, the Libertarian Party of Colorado has an annual camping trip over Labor Day weekend, so I wasn't going to be anywhere near cell connection. However, I take my duties very seriously. So if the meeting wasn't moved, I was going to have to unhook everything on Sunday night, drive 20 to 40 miles to a town, sit maybe in a McDonald's where I could get some Wi-Fi, do the meeting, and then drive back to the campsite. Either way, I was going to be at the meeting. But it looks like everybody has plans except for a couple alternates, perhaps. So the meeting's going to be moved. It's better for everybody, it looks like, for the meeting to be moved. So our monthly meeting will be September 11th. Okay. So that's the meeting thing. Let's talk about New Mexico. So I didn't hear this firsthand. So when I say things, I like to say when something is a rumor, but I'll also tell you whether or not I believe the rumor or the secondhand information, because I know who the sources are. I don't reveal my sources unless I have explicit permission to do so. So from what I understand, Mr. Lucchini is telling his board and telling members in New Mexico that the LNC wants to disaffiliate New Mexico. Just stop for a second and think. We had a motion about New Mexico. If we wanted to disaffiliate them, we would have already done it. I can tell you, and Chair McCardle said on the record, we do not want to disaffiliate anybody. Any LNC that actually wants to disaffiliate an affiliate, like, run away screaming. That's like the nuclear option. Like, it should never be completely off the table because it's something that sometimes has to be done, but it's not anything anyone wants to do. I do not want that to happen. Absolutely do not. If a motion had been made to disaffiliate at that meeting where we did pass a motion, I would have voted against it. So depends, I guess, on who you want to believe. But if that's what you're hearing from anyone in New Mexico, that the LNC wants to disaffiliate New Mexico, you've heard it from the horse's mouth. So decide who you want to believe. You either think I'm lying, and we said this in the meeting, which is your prerogative. You can think I'm lying, but what would have stopped me from making that motion if that's what I wanted? It's not like I'm on the LNC or anything. However, there's a serious problem. And I even said at that meeting, there is grounds right now for disaffiliation, but I do not want that. So let's try to work with them to correct the problems. Now, I know there's an ongoing, and this will end up relating to Idaho, but I just wanted to address this here. There's this ongoing dispute in the party, and as I've said on my other stream, I think it's a very naive understanding of the bylaws that makes absolutely no sense when applied to actual real-life situations. Of the provisions that says, you know, this is going to be a paraphrase, but it's close enough that the affiliates have autonomy except as provided elsewhere in these national bylaws. But affiliates having autonomy doesn't mean that national has only two options, zero, and we're going to talk about zero, because zero has now become absolute zero in like a ridiculously painful way, or disaffiliation. That is like saying, if you're having problems in your marriage, you can either suck it up, buttercup, and don't even tell your spouse, or divorce them. No counseling, no mediation, no attempts to fix the problem. Nope. You cooked a bad dinner, honey. Here's your divorce papers. That makes no sense. We don't act that way in life, and it's not a just way to act. So if we have an issue with something that happened in New Mexico, and we do. The issue is that members' rights are being trampled, and because an illegitimate convention was held that changed the Constitution and bylaws that will take away the opportunity for certain offices to be voted upon at the 2023 convention. And here's what's so funny about this. They can easily turn around and just hold the convention properly and still make those changes. Nothing is stopping them from doing that. And it's not that difficult. Their notice requirements are not onerous. Why they just don't turn around and have a legitimate convention, it just makes me think it's a point of pride now that they just don't want to concede that they screwed up the call of this convention. It happens. And for those of you who think, oh, I'm just saying this because quite obviously Mr. Lucchini and I are not BFF. Colorado will tell you that I busted their chops and demanded pretty much that they call off a convention that had defective notice here. And it was defective by 3 days. And Lucchini's had far more problems than here. But I did it in my own state. And saddled myself with a board I did not like for an additional year. Because the convention that was being called would have had elections to get to at least have the opportunity to vote out people I did not like on the board. But the principle of notice is so important that rather than just going, I didn't see that, let's just let it go. No, I said, you guys didn't give proper notice. So they got to sit in their seats for another year until proper notice could be given. So this isn't personal. This is parliamentary. This is members' rights. Members' rights aren't personal. Rights are rights. And that's just the way it is. So National sent them a letter to say, please acknowledge that the convention had defective notice, therefore is not legitimate, and that your prior constitution bylaws are still operative. And they can do that and say, okay, and then turn around, properly notice a convention, and properly pass those amendments. Our problem isn't with the amendments they passed. The amendments they passed, they would have every right to pass at a legitimate convention. Do I think they're good amendments? Some of them, yeah. Actually, one of them I think's really good. The others, I'm not a big fan of, but I'm not a member of New Mexico. It's not my business. It's their business to amend. They just have to do it properly. But I suspect at a properly called convention, those bad amendments wouldn't pass. But maybe they would. And if they did, okay. It's y'all's bed. You're the ones lying in it, not me. But if they refuse, which it looks like is going to happen, which is a shame because this is a game of chicken that doesn't need to happen because they can easily turn around and call another convention. This isn't something where if this convention's declared illegitimate, they're like locked in for a year and could do nothing, as would be the case with some parties that don't have provisions for special conventions in their bylaws. But they don't have that problem. They could easily turn around and fix this. But they're purposely picking a fight with National to prove a point, and I don't know why. All we're trying to do is protect the rights of members. That's it. Give proper notice. Richard, no, because the way no, it wasn't with my usual notice. I announced earlier today because it's a Twitch only stream. So I'm so glad you found it, Richard. And I don't know if you got to watch the meeting last night, but I really would love to hear your thoughts. But right now we're talking about New Mexico, which I know you have some opinions on. But a certain resident of your state isn't too happy with you agreeing with me on this one, Mr. Brown. I'm glad I'm all the way in Colorado. This is my these are grapefruit beers, are they? Yeah, ooh, bubbly. They're really delicious, by the way. Okay, and by the way, I've gotten some emails of people really angry or because they don't like this person, they're like, Joshua Smith called that meeting and he wasn't even there. Joshua was not there for the initial roll call. He came soon thereafter. Joshua was there for the meeting. I'm not at liberty to say more. All I can say is, before you judge people, maybe you should know what is going on. It's common knowledge he has a very, very pregnant wife. Let's just leave it at that and not demand that people put the party meeting above that. Did you see me like riding Stephen Nikola's rear end because he left my suspension meeting and his vote was the vote that would have kept me from all of that pain? He had to go home to a pregnant wife. It's not his fault David Sexton snuck in behind his back. I did not begrudge Stephen Nikola having to go home to his pregnant wife. So let's show a little charity to people, but Joshua was there. He wasn't there for the initial roll call. He came, I have the timestamp because I have to note that. But anyway, just for those of you who might be wondering, he was there. All right, so I suspect New Mexico is going to refuse. Then it's going to be, then it's a game of chicken. Do we allow violations of member rights just to stand? I don't think we can ethically do that. So what do? I don't know. It is a lot to read, Richard. We're going to get to Idaho in a minute. Let me just finish with this New Mexico thing. So I just hope that cooler heads prevail. They just do it the right way, and we can all move on our happy way. Nobody wants to disaffiliate New Mexico. But we also don't want members' rights to be trampled. So it's going to be up to a deliberative process if they refuse. I am imploring them to just do their convention the right way. This is a fight that doesn't need to happen. Now, for anyone to say that the LNC doesn't have the authority to try to mediate something before it heads to disaffiliation, that's just crazy pants. That is not the way to treat people you're in a partnership with. I guess, and funny enough, it's the same people who thought it was perfectly appropriate for the LNC to go from 0 to removal with me. So I guess at least they're being consistent. But here's now where the do nothing has turned into like absolute 0, like outer space temperature 0. Now a claim is even made that we can't even ask questions of affiliates. That merely asking a question is violating the autonomy of an affiliate, because at the Idaho meeting, I asked, where are you getting your authority to have a hybrid meeting? Because I didn't see it in their bylaws. And apparently, me even asking the question was just an abomination. So now we have people who are actually saying the only option you can do if you have a problem is disaffiliate. And you can't even investigate before disaffiliation because that would require asking questions. And asking questions is wrong. That is the most barking moonbat thing I've seen. And thank you, JJ, for refuting that statement. But it is shocking to me that you're the only person who pointed out how absolutely insane that assertion is. Like, my God. Yeah, questions are aggression, just like petitions, apparently. And I was pointed, by the way, to certain bylaws provisions. I don't think they satisfy the Roberts requirements to explicitly allow electronic conventions. I don't. But since it's not an issue, it turned out not to be an issue. It doesn't matter. And I told them, you guys got to fix your bylaws. Because merely saying how you would credential remote delegates, that isn't authorizing them. It's just saying how you would do it if you had them. But you still have to put in the provision to have them. it's very weird. I mean, I understand that reasonable people could say, well, you know, that kind of presumes that electronic conventions are allowed. But what am I going to give away your day one tweet? I didn't even know how to do that. You're going to have to tell me how to do that, Tyler. But really, they need to clear up the ambiguities. But that's internal issues that they need to deal with. That was just me going as personal opinion. You're going to have problems with these bylaws if you don't fix them. Okay, so what else has gone on with the LNC? I'm trying to cover everything but Idaho and saving Idaho for last. I think that's been it. It's been... Oh, committees were populated. Those names have been posted. For those of you who applied and were not selected, Chair McCardle made it very, very clear that she's keeping these applications on hand. And when we need volunteers and stuff, this is a pool of volunteers. I just cannot even tell you what a fan I am. Like, I can tell you. That's a weird expression, is it? When you say, I can't even say, and then you go on to say. Angela's doing such a great job, in my opinion. She just really is. She actually consults her officers. She makes sure that everybody at a meeting is heard. And I tend to know Angela's personal feelings because we discuss things. But I see her go out of her way to make sure that people I know whose positions she don't agree with are heard, and are heard with equal time. And I'm just so impressed. Just super, super impressed. And anyway, I wanted to get that out there. So now let's talk about Idaho, because I noticed where Richard said there's a lot to read. Yes, there is a lot to read. I put up on the LNC list today, and I'm going to pull this up because I want you guys to know this is available. Plus, I just want to talk about just another really like crazy pants thing that happened. Let me pull up Gmail. Just give me 1 second. It took me so many hours to go through that information, Richard. You have no idea. Well, you do have idea. That's another weird expression, isn't it? When I say you have no idea, I mean you actually do have an idea. Let me find this link and I will put it up on the screen. Okay. So when I was reviewing these documents, I was having a really hard time keeping track of everything because it's there's a lot. As Richard Brown said, there's a lot. So, and I didn't think the timelines that were submitted by any of the parties were sufficient. I know there was a timeline in the JC opinion. There was a separate timeline. For me, I wasn't satisfied. So I wanted to go through and do my own timeline that would be fairly accurate. It could be a day or two off, but at least gave the sequence of events. And I wanted to look at each document and then put down my thoughts about the document because there was so much. And I wanted to just keep everything straight in my head. So I made a spreadsheet with my own notes, with certain Roberts references, with certain Idaho statute references, with certain bylaws references. But these were my notes. I did share my notes with the LNC because I wanted their thoughts on my thoughts. I said, this is where my thoughts are going. What do you think? I wanted to, see where everyone else was going. Heading into this meeting so we could be prepared. However, because I didn't keep these notes to myself, because I did share them with the LNC, I felt it was only appropriate because you know how I am about secret emails and all that kind of crap, that since it was something that I did share with the entire LNC, that which they may have taken into consideration, and may still take into consideration as we're moving to a vote, that I wanted to make my notes publicly available. And I understand JJ said I had difficulty following them because, as I said, they weren't meant for anybody but me. They make sense to me. There's a lot of my own shorthand in there, but I didn't want to keep anything secret. So I understand they're not going to make sense to everybody. They make sense to me, but I did make them public. And I'm going to stick these up on the screen here because it was my own thoughts as I read documents. But if you had any specific questions, JJ, I'd be more than glad to answer them. But let me stick this up on the screen here. Here we go. And Richard, you can always take a look here. But one thing I wanted to point out here about these notes. Notice the big honking yellow highlight introduction I put up at the top. And I'm going to read it out loud because I know it could be hard to read on the screen because there's a lot. It said, "These are very loose notes while I was reviewing documents and from information gleaned during the August 11th LNC meeting. They are not intended to be formal findings, but a way for me to get my thoughts and opinions together and to preserve the record since the case may go to an appeal. They can be revised if additional arguments occur to me or additional facts are brought to light. Dates are intended to be on or about and may be off by a day or two. Since I did share this document with the LNC, I am making it public for transparency purposes. But these are my notes and thoughts alone and are not endorsed by the LNC except to the extent that they comport with any properly voted on resolution or motions of the LNC. They are also not intended to be professional parliamentary work product, as I am not the party's parliamentarian. The statutes, bylaws, RONR citations are also for my quick reference and not intended to be exhaustive or unduly repetitive. I also use these notes to be sure that we had all pertinent documents for the OneNote for the meeting." So I explained the limits and intent of these notes. I think that's pretty clear, particularly the sentence that says, one second here, my eyes aren't so good. "These are my notes and thoughts alone and are not endorsed by the LNC except to the extent they comport with any properly voted on resolutions or motions of the LNC." So one of my biggest fans today posted a link to this and said, "I don't know if this is intended to be official or not." What? No, these aren't official. These are my personal notes that I just happen to be sharing. Not a soul in the world may agree with them. And as JJ pointed out, not even everyone's going to be able to follow them because it's my shorthand notes. But if you're curious, they are they're linked on the LNC list. You can go through them, but as you can see, I went day by day, did what the main event was, and then I put my thoughts down about what I thought about the document and in some points briefly summarized it. And then in this column over here, column D, I put some relevant statutes that I might need to go back and reference. In this column, bylaws. And if there's nothing in the bylaws column, that doesn't mean there isn't a bylaw on point. It just means that I didn't need to stick a note there because I already knew it. And then here I put some Robert's Rules references. Okay, so you can go through this document yourself. And these are my crazy thoughts. And I don't mean crazy as insane. I mean, you can see the way I think. Sometimes it's stream of consciousness. It's very... a stream of consciousness. But like for instance, here, which was for, what document is this? I hate spreadsheets sometimes. This big one. I think... Now I lost what I was looking at. Oh my God. Now I'm gonna I really sometimes just hate spreadsheets. Now I can't even find what I was looking at. One second here. I think. Okay. So this is my comments on the filing of the MHOFs that the Judicial Committee doesn't have jurisdiction. They called it a direction to vacate. I'm not going to nitpick on terminology. You can only vacate something that's actually decided. They're basically asking them they're basically challenging jurisdiction. I call it the vacate or the vacation here, but it really technically isn't that. So, for instance, here's my thoughts. It says, I will not repeat comments made elsewhere, and I'm talking to myself, about how nothing about the convention required new PCs. PCs are precinct committeemen. So the date did not require it to be invalidated. Just in summary, the bylaws allow this date, and Idaho laws allow for an alternative date, which it would not do if different dates would invalidate conventions. Both sides are alleging failure to take up grievances properly, but properly demands a point of reference. The convention has a rebuttable presumption of validity, so the proactive actions must come from those challenging the convention and the burden not placed on those presuming its validity. The unilateral removal of the emails, meaning some board members came home from the National Convention and found that their email accounts were deleted, shows this did not happen. This included removal of the presumptively elected vice chair, a conflict of interest decided with regards to some JC members, and then I just say on how RO&R doesn't require recusal if everyone has basically the same conflict. Just not liking somebody's not a conflict. And it says the argument here is circular because the same charge can be made of the respondents. But here's the argument of the MHOFs was, well, the argument kept changing, but I just wanted to show you these notes, but let me come up here. I noticed two nearly mutually exclusive arguments were being made. One argument was that there wasn't a state central committee that's Idaho state law says the state central committee is the one to set the date of a convention. They didn't have a state central committee, therefore any setting of a date was invalid. But if that's true, that would still be true. And you can't call another convention because you still, if you're going to exclude Corsetti, I know a lot of these names aren't terribly familiar with you, but there is a guy who was validly elected, but they're claiming he wasn't, so let's just take as true for the sake of argument that he wasn't, then they still don't have a state central committee by their own argument. So you can't use arguments that if you apply to yourself would invalidate your own argument. That's recursive to the extreme. So then the argument then turned around to be, well, Idaho state law requires that the the convention happen after the primary elections at which precinct committeemen were elected. There's no Idaho statute that says that. There's just none. A bunch were proffered, copies of them were all read, and I'm not an attorney, so I can't claim to give you an authoritative legal opinion, though one side did have a lawyer who reviewed it and also concluded that the convention was proper. But I am a paralegal, as is Angela, and we both came to the same conclusion. I mean, I know how to read statutes, and I don't think we live in a country with a priesthood of lawyers and that individual people cannot have opinions on the law. Like, otherwise we couldn't live our lives. You know, you're going to say that you can't understand what a speed limit thing is without a lawyer, I mean, it's just, it's nonsensical. But if you're going to go to court, obviously, you know, you can't do the unauthorized practice of law, which isn't simply reading statutes and saying what you think they mean, as long as you're not representing that you're an attorney. But there was no statute that said that. Now, the argument then turned into, yes, but you want your elected precinct committeemen to be represented in this process. But they would be. The ones that were already in office at the time of convention. It's not the fault of the delegates who went to the convention that nobody was holding that office because you didn't manage to get anybody elected. There was the opportunity to get anyone, to get someone elected. But you can't say because in the future someone may be elected, so therefore we need to preserve these potential future rights over and against present ones. It just makes no sense. So what it all came down to is, was the April 2nd convention valid? I've made the exact same consistent argument with Delaware, with Massachusetts, and now with Idaho. And it is that a convention, because it happens, not going to say it happens 50 plus 1 times a year, because some states, I think Texas is one of them, doesn't have a convention every year. It's every other year. But most states have a state convention every year. So let's just say there's 50 a year. I know it's a little less than that, but we're just going to use that. 50 times a year, there are changes that happen at state conventions. They are presumptively valid. The state affiliate parties do not have to, before the LNC will recognize there's a new chair, prove it's valid. They tell us the chair changed, we changed our records, and we move on. When someone is claiming a convention is not valid, which does happen, the burden of proof is on them that it's not valid. And if they can prove that, then member rights start to get implicated, and there are ways we could step in, as happened in New Mexico. That burden of proof that convention was invalid was met. It was very easily met, by the way, because it was defective in multiple ways. I think there was 4 ways in which it was defective. It might just be 3. Any one of which would have rendered it invalid. So they were severable. Even if you defeated one, such as the one where New Mexico law is so unclear as to whether they could even have an electronic convention. Let's just say, yep, there's some emergency order, they were allowed to have it. The notice thing would invalidate the convention. But this wasn't the case here. That burden of proof, which isn't beyond a reasonable doubt, it would be like a civil burden of proof. It'd be, preponderance of the evidence. That wasn't even remotely met. This convention was valid, and not only that, they have an internal JC, and their JC determined the convention was valid. So, for people claiming that this is interfering in the autonomy of an affiliate, it's nuts. All we are doing is recognizing they had a convention, there was a challenge to it, the challenge has no merit. Why is the challenge treated as the correct view, and us simply recognizing the convention that happens every year as valid somehow interfering? One would think it would be the other way around. And in fact, my position is we don't have to do a thing. The burden of proof was not met. The de facto state of affairs right now is that the April 2nd convention was valid. The people elected at the convention or their successors that happened in the ordinary course of business since then are the leadership of the Idaho affiliate. So why is there a need to make a resolution? It's because the challengers are going to refuse to accept this, have refused to accept it so far, and have noticed another convention. So the membership of Idaho deserves some kind of absolute clarity on who is the leadership of the affiliate that they should be listening to. And the only reason the membership is in this state of confusion is because, I'm not going to presume bad faith. It is an illegitimate action. That doesn't mean it was in bad faith, because the MHOFs illegitimately, in my opinion, the LNC has not passed any such resolution yet, by the way, used the party's mailing list, which they did not have a right to do, to email all the members to tell them there would be another convention. Idaho is in a state of utter confusion right now, and it requires a resolution of the LNC to set it straight. Now, the resolution hasn't even been moved yet because I'm workshopping it, and I'm assuming it will pass, but my assumption could be wrong. I don't think it's wrong, but it could be wrong. But let's just assume it passes. It gives clarity to the members in Idaho that they don't have to take time off from work and spend money or do whatever they need to do to get to this August convention, that it's not a real convention. Also, if there are assets of the party that have not been turned over from the prior board, I don't know if there is or there isn't, this will assist our affiliate in doing whatever legal means they need to do to get their assets back. It's also not interference when the duly elected board asked us to look at this. We didn't just pick this out of the air. We were requested by the people who were the presumptively valid people to look at this. So we did. Now, we would have looked at it even if it was the challengers, because, again, member rights are implicated. But this, us looking at the Idaho situation, is far more clear that it is not interference of any kind than the Massachusetts situation was. And I obviously don't think that one was interference either. But this one, it was the board that was elected at convention, at their annual convention, that asked us to look at it. How in the world can you be interfering when someone asked you to? That's called consensual. It's just amazing to me, the inconsistency on the part of some critics, where in the case of a board they like, such as in Massachusetts, no, it's the one that was elected at the annual convention, not the challengers. But with one they don't like in Delaware, no, it's the challengers that are automatically right, or you're interfering. And again, in this case, it's like pick a philosophy or a principle and stick with it, because you can't claim the same thing with Idaho and with Massachusetts. The situations are entirely reversed. Be consistent, like make it make sense. So the presumptively valid affiliate asked for our help, and we gave it. They asked for our help from people, against people they were claiming were illegitimately using the party's name, goodwill, and assets to confuse and usurp member rights. If that isn't the purpose of the National Party, that's insane. Now, that provision in the bylaw says, except as otherwise provided in these bylaws. And as Alicia Matson, I'm not going to be able to argue it any better than her. I would refer you to her very lengthy and articulate opinion in the Delaware matter, that the bylaws require us to know who the leadership is, or we can't even know who our affiliate is. How can you respect autonomy if you don't even know who it is that is what it is? You have to determine who the affiliate is. Nuts. Just completely nuts. So, despite all the other issues, Really, all it came down to was the April 2nd, 2022 convention ballot, at least as far as the LNC is concerned. That doesn't mean there aren't other issues, but those other issues have to be resolved internally by Idaho, such as, are the officers voting members of the State Central Committee? That is definitely an outstanding issue, and that's going to have to be resolved internally by Idaho, or some kind of court action. I personally think they are. To me, I think it's pretty crystal clear they are, but not everyone agrees with me. Tyler asks who's in charge of Idaho's bank account right now. I have no idea. That wasn't part of the purview of the LNC. I don't even know. I mean, they have to have a bank account, quite obviously, but whether there's money in it or not, when it comes to the Libertarian Party, that's anyone's guess. Like, there's been plenty of times where bank accounts have been in the hands of the wrong people, but it had like $200 in it. So, who cares? You know, I don't even know if they have any money. If there's really no money to speak of, the legitimate board just needs to go open another bank account and maybe inform the bank that this isn't a business account. See, so JJ disagrees. I think they very clearly are voting members. But again, that's for the Idaho JC to determine. They made no determination on that. I was discussing this today via email with someone in Idaho who wasn't happy with my position, who says, no, the JC's already decided this. No, they didn't. They actually examined the issues under, they had like these four possible interpretations, 1, 2, 3, 4. And they examined things under both interpretation number 1 and interpretation number 2. Under interpretation number 1, the officers are voting members, and under interpretation number 2, they're not, but the conclusion was the same. So they made no determination on that. The executive board can refer this question to the Judicial Committee, and I would highly encourage them to do that and settle this once and for all. But that's not the LNC's business. That needs to be dealt with in Idaho, and they need to clean up their bylaws. But another reason for the LNC to issue a resolution is there was a challenge. We don't believe the challenge had any merit. But I believe that people should have appeal rights if they can prove jurisdiction to the national JC and prove a case. So I want there to be an official on the record vote, because it's not a decision of the LNC without a motion and a vote to appeal, though they probably could argue constructive disaffiliation through actions. I mean, yeah, they could, because I've made that argument myself. But I want it to be clear. I want them to have clear appeal rights. And funny enough, the legitimate board welcomes an appeal as well. I welcome an appeal. That's how positive I am we are correct. That's how positive they are correct. Though I was positive I was correct in the appeal of my wrongful removal as well. But that's, so maybe me being positive, take that for what it's worth. But the legitimate board there does not fear an appeal as well. So me wanting there to be an official decision is actually trying to make sure that persons who are aggrieved by our position have a route to have it reviewed by the National Judicial Committee. We don't have to do that. We could be sneaky and go, well, you know, de facto, that's the convention. And they would really, they'd have some recourse, but it'd be much more difficult. We're giving them a very clear means to appeal. And if the national JC goes against us, well, that's the way it goes. I mean, until next convention, I suppose. JJ says, I would suggest determining who's on the board. I'm assuming you mean state SCC, by amending the bylaws. That can't happen until 2023, though. And who can set the date for we don't want this issue again. So the bylaws, as Robert says, need to be amended to remove the ambiguity as soon as is practicable. But the soonest really that it's practicable is 2023. And I think they need some kind of guidance before 2023. But it definitely should be on the docket for 2023. But something that really struck me today in going over my notes is one of the arguments that the Imhoffs made is that there is an existential conflict between the bylaws and state law with a change that was made to change the conventions from June to April. So existential, it required them to invalidate a convention. Yet, at the allegedly new convention they called, they didn't have addressing that issue and fixing their bylaws on the agenda. I'm sorry, that makes no sense if that is really your position. If your position is that the bylaws were oopsie amended the year before and created an existential crisis, then your highest priority should be fixing that, as Robert says, as soon as is practicable. And if it's their position that the August 27th convention would be the annual convention, you would think they would have put on the agenda, let's fix these bylaws that caused us to invalidate the last convention. But they didn't. All they wanted to put on there was election of party positions. So I'm sorry, the actions seem to belie the assertion. If you really believed that there was a fatal error in your bylaws, you would be panicked to fix it. But they weren't. It doesn't pass the sniff test. So, we're workshopping the motion. I'm going to read to you the resolution as it stands now. It hasn't been moved yet. I wrote something up. There's been multiple amendments to it. I don't even want to call them amendments because it's not official. So suggested changes, which I agreed with. So let me find it. Resolution, I think it's proposed resolution I am offering. Okay. No, that's not the one I'm looking for. Oh, God, I should always have these ready, shouldn't I? Oh, JJ, you have the link, don't you? Proposed Idaho resolution. Okay, here it is. All right, I'm going to pull this up on the screen. And if y'all read it last night, you will notice it's a little different now. Another change was even made this afternoon, suggested by Robley Hall of the LNC. So, let me share the screen and read to you how, as it reads now. There could be more changes again. This hasn't been moved yet. It's being workshopped. So right now it reads, whereas the Libertarian National Committee has found no convincing evidence that the regularly scheduled annual convention of the Libertarian Party of Idaho, LPID, which took place on April 2nd, 2022, was invalid. Whereas the delegates at the April 2nd, 2022 LPID annual convention interpreted their own bylaws and recognized the convention and its business as valid. Whereas LPID leadership elections were conducted at the April 2nd, 2022 LPID annual convention, and whereas the LPID Judicial Committee determined that, quote, The convention held on April 2nd, 2022 was a legitimate, valid, and effective convention of the Libertarian Party of Idaho, and that the officers and their successors, including Jason Sorensen as the interim chair, are the legitimate officers of the LPID. Resolved that the Libertarian National Committee recognizes the leadership elected at the April 2nd, 2022 LPID annual convention and their successors in the ordinary course of business as the legitimate representatives of the recognized Idaho affiliate, including interim chair Jason Sorensen, who was elected pursuant to the bylaws of the LPID. So, that's the resolution so far. We'll see if there is any further changes. I see some redundance, and there's a change I may make. I actually don't think we need to repeat that sentence about the interim chair. I think leaving it in the whereas clause is fine, and we could probably take that part out of the resolved clause. I'd like to hear the parliamentarians in the room's opinion on that. Reading it out loud, it just seemed a little bit redundant to me. Okay. And you want to laugh. Jay, if you're watching this, when I originally just started drafting out that resolution last night, I accidentally put down your last name is Jorgensen. Because you go, so it's like Jay Sorensen, Joe Jorgensen. I melded you two. Just don't get bit by a bat, okay? I don't want you to have to get rabies shots. All right, so unless there's any other conventions. No more conventions. Unless there's any other questions, I think that's pretty much it for the weekly roundup. I don't think there's really anything coming up in the next week. There might be. I hate saying that because it's always like, jinx. If there's something coming up that you guys know that I'm just, by the end of the week, sometimes I'm a bit brain dead, let me know. So I'm going to give it a few moments and just tell you what's on my docket for this weekend. I'm going to open my campaign bank account. And then once I do that, I'll be able to, I'll be doing different grifting. I'll be grifting for my town council run. I'm running for town council of Castle Rock. So I'm going to go in the morning to open my campaign bank account. I will probably at least start on my campaign website tomorrow. And I'm always overly ambitious. I don't get everything done because I think Mike and I are doing Cultivar O&R on Sunday too. And I've got things to do for my job. I would like to get my petition over with tomorrow. They only need 25 signatures. Of course, you get more than that because validity and all of that. So I might walk the neighborhood. I've got my walking list too. I might just walk all the libertarians because that then will introduce them to the fact that there's a libertarian running and I want to get them involved. Excuse me. So I've got my Town of Castle Rock municipal election nominating petition packet to do as well. I have a couple weeks to do that though, so it might not have to be tomorrow. But next weekend there's an excursion. But I did want to invite everyone here. I know most of you, I don't know if there's anyone in Colorado listening, but the Labor Day Colorado camping trip is open to anyone. So if for some reason you want to come visit Colorado and you want to come camping in the mountains with people who like know what they're doing and like know the good spots, you can come and camp with us. Just get in touch with me and I'll get you the details. It's over Labor Day weekend. It's a lot of fun. I don't know if there's going to be shooting this weekend at all. I don't know if the spot they picked I don't know if it's in the national forest or state forest. I don't know if there's going to be shooting allowed. Pretty definitely sure that I'm bringing my bow. So there'll at least be some bow target practice. And no, this is not a Marxism stream. Think of the exact opposite of Marxism, and that's what this is. Answering I can't pronounce that. All right. And so if you want to come on the Colorado camping trip, let me know. But also on the 20th, the Libertarian Party of Douglas County is hosting, and this would be more for people in Colorado because this isn't like a multi-day thing. This is just an evening thing. But if you happen to be in Colorado, you're welcome to come. We're going to be hiking up to an abandoned quartz quarry at night because the fire ban's been lifted. So we're going to have a campfire. The way the quartz glints, from what I hear, in firelight is just fantastic. There's a little camping spot up there. We're going to grill some food. We're going to have a good old time. So that's going to be on the 20th. I think on the 21st, we're doing another road cleanup. The Libertarian Party of Douglas County has adopted a section of Parker Road. And normally we only clean it like every 3 months, but the last time we were there, people have been piggy, and we only got a tiny section done. So we're going to keep going back each month until like it's acceptable. So we do that as community service. All right, that is it for this evening. I do thank you all so much for coming. And now it's late, and I still have to record my radio show for tomorrow. I'll probably be doing that in the wee hours of the morning. And I'm hoping to do a stream tomorrow, but we shall see. So have a good night, everyone. Love you all. Thank you.
Given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business, not because they want to